Welcome to a continuation of the Boise State MBA program dedicated to risk project management. This is our final module in this program, and it's dealing with the area of monitoring and controlling. Everything else, all activity ahead of this, was in the planning area. So we did a great deal of planning. We've done all kinds of research, analysis, we've identified tools, techniques, we've talked about stakeholders, communications, a wide variety of tools, their pluses or minuses. We've completed all that, we've had our checkoff meeting with the sponsors, and now the project is in production and moving forward. And now the real work begins. Managing a project can be a long, sometimes lonely road, trying to get to the top of that, your objective or your mountain. So as you look at this, again, this is a day-to-day task. It takes effort every day to keep your project on track, on the trail, and basically on path to meet your objectives. So again, this is the hard part of risk or any project management. The fun part's the planning, the fun part's the celebration, how we got a great plan. The real work and the real test of a management and your MBA skills is completing the project that you did all that good planning for. Some basic questions we want to ask. Did it work? Was the plan we put in place effective? Did we do it correctly? These are honest questions you have to find out. Did we review it? Did we update regularly? Let's make sure we don't slip along the way as we do these tasks to keep our project, our team, and our business on the path to success. Your primary objective or task in monitoring and controlling is to really make sure that you have tracked the identified risk, that you monitor the residual risk, those risks that are still in the project, no matter how hard we try. A new one, and it's a pretty important one, is identify those new risks and ensure that and then the next one is to ensure our risk response plans are executed. And effectively throughout the product life cycle, make sure we're doing the right kind of activities. Kind of the circle view of looking at risk. It's great to plan, it's great to understand where you want to be, but do you take the time, do you take the effort, and are you on track? Have you monitored? Have you identified? Have you made sure the plans are followed to make sure that you've tracked the risk on this project? The term you'll hear in project management in this phase of monitoring and controlling as you move forward is called risk reassessment. So basically, if something happens, a major unexpected risk happens, you should probably do that. A complex change comes through, a major change to the project or activity. One we tend to miss at times is called the end-of-phase review. So if we're going through a development cycle, and we've used examples in class of sometimes 12 to 18-month projects, as you have those major milestones or you exit, it's always good to go back and look at your risk during those checkpoints. Sometimes you do a basically replanning or a major elaboration of the project. And it's also good to have those periodic reviews to track program information. So again, internal vigilance is the price of great risk management. The critical success factors: make sure you have an integrated risk monitoring and control that ties in with the project control. Continuous monitoring the risk trigger. Remember in our risk plan, we said what will trigger this risk, what activity? Those are not just historical things to lay down. Those are things to calendar, look at, manage, and if they occur, make sure they're well addressed in your plans. And maintain risk awareness. This is something you want to do on every day. Look around, be alive. Be alive in the project to make sure that you're covering all of the issues. So this is an awareness issue. Again, it's not static. It's the day-to-day activity of managing any business or project. As we look at the kind of the tools and technique, we want to manage our reserves. We want to track trigger conditions. We want to track the overall risk. And we want to track compliance to our plan. This is kind of like a little stepping stone to make sure that we really get to our goal of meeting the project. This leads to our standard intro of the tools in this area. Again, the strengths, weakness, and critical success factors. As we've talked before, critical chain methodology, CCPM, is referenced in this area. It does have many uses. We don't see many in our business area anymore. Again, we provide that for FYI data. If you need it, I recommend that you do some research on it, and you probably want to bring in some outside help for this specialized process. If your project uses reserves where you put extra funds in the project to make sure you address a risk, then your obligation to the sponsor and the team is to make sure that you monitor those and see what the burn rate is. The burn is the drawdown rate of those reserves. This is a key tool to basically monitor the health of your planning in the area of these risks. So if you use risk, you have them in your plan, you have an account, use the tools you have, both the Microsoft project tools if you use those, use your accounting team to help you do that, but most of all, make sure you analyze the risk that the reserves you have to make sure you're using them appropriately. Risk audit is a formal assessment of where you are in the project plan. Risk audits should be something that many people add to their risk management plan. And sometimes people don't like it. They don't like people coming by and liking the auditors looking over their shoulder. But if you specify in this risk management plan and why you're doing it and communicate it, it needs to be, can be a really key tool to you. Don't overuse it, plan it correctly, communicate it, and it will help the team stay on track. This is like a risk audit, a risk reassessment, but it's usually caused by some external force. The audit is usually caused for a plan. You may have an audit that we'll do an audit every 3 months or at every checkpoint. But the reassessment is driven by some force that makes the project change, we talked about earlier. It does take a lot of time, but to make it successful, it has to be a well-maintained project and risk documentation. You have to have some structure for this risk reassessment. And this does happen usually when there's an external change, usually a major one, and it's also when there's a lot of stress on the team. So as a project manager, you will have to be there to help the team understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're doing it to help the team, not on a quote, a witch hunt. We always love meetings, don't we? And so our status meeting can be a really good place that we review the status of our project. Where are we going? The many project managers have weekly meetings. One of the more popular trends is a daily Scrum type meeting where you get together for 15 minutes. No matter what format, what structure you use, it's a good way to get information about the status of our risk, what has occurred, what could occur, and what's been completed. But you also need to make sure you manage your meeting well. So good meeting preparation, good use of people's time is the key to making a status meeting work as you monitor the risk. Trend analysis. As we watch our project, we can look at the hours spent, the money spent, how we're doing on tasks ahead and behind, how's our critical path doing, are we still managing the critical path correctly, have we used sensitivity on the critical path to understand 1 or 2 day changes in there, what they can occur to us. This is your trend analysis area. Basically, it's having you understand the data that the systems can provide you. These systems can be information systems, they can be your team, they can be data if you use Microsoft Project or a tool like that gives you these data. The data is not just to look at, the data is to analyze, and for you as the MBA and project manager to take some action on to make sure you're on course. Variance analysis. This can be very complex. It's also, we'll demonstrate in class next week what an EVA process goes through. We'll do it by manual means, and then it will make the use of the tools like Microsoft Project, if you load the data and keep the data correct, a lot more easier to use this. But what you're really saying is, I have a forecast, and I want to go out and make sure that if I spend my money to that plan, have I gotten value back, and have I also looked at the actual impact of the risk along the way. So it does take a lot of basically realistic prior definitions of what is a significant variance. It's 1%, 2%, whatever. You have to define those. A good place to define those is your risk management plan. As you learned in the MBA program, documentation is a critical factor for success. And in the MBA, in the project management program, it's extremely important. We want you to document everything you can. So as you've done all this work in your risk management plan, you've done all the work in the risk register, you've captured all the data along the way, you've all the status meetings for the risk monthly meetings or weekly meetings as part of your monitoring and controlling. It's now really important for you to help capture those. We want to make sure we have those for the lessons learned. We want to look at what we can avoid in the future. We also want to look at how we transferred or shared activities. Was there any unexpected risks that occurred or related data? How good were we in risk mitigation enhancements? Remember, these all sound like your strategies? Well, that's what they are. How good did you plan? Where are you going? Most important question as you get through all this risk reassessment, all this activity, what did we build? Did we monitor the risk as we built our plan? Is your house that you're proud of, or a house that's kind of looks a little different? Is your project successful, or you have some major regrets? Best way to solve that is to plan, do, check, act. Make sure in all your areas you have a plan, that you complete the plan, put it in place, but also check it. That's what monitoring controlling is all about. And when you have data that there's an issue, act on it to make your project, your team, and you a success.